When I first saw the stones, I thought nothing of them. Cairns weren't unusual along the backcountry trails, sometimes built by hikers to mark the way, but these were different. Small stacks of rocks in a perfect circle, each one smeared with something dark red. Paint, I told myself. It had to be paint. I'd been hiking alone for 4 days, deep in the forest where the maps warned, expect no other travelers. That night, I set up camp a mile past the cairns, trying to shrug it off. I'd seen stranger things in the wilderness, but when dawn broke, my stomach twisted. Around my tent stood another circle of stone piles, identical to the first. Neat, precise, and each topped with a glistening red handprint. I hadn't heard a thing during the night, not a twig snap, not a single footstep. But listen to this. I packed fast, my hands shaking, and pushed further into the forest. The silence pressed in, thicker than I'd ever known. Even the birds seemed to avoid this place. By midday, sweat ran down my spine. But when I turned a corner on the trail, my legs buckled. Another circle of cairns waited for me, larger this time, as if it had been laid out in anticipation. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept my flashlight clenched in my hand, sweeping the trees, waiting for movement. But the forest was still, too still. And then it got worse. The second morning, the stones were back. This time the circle was tighter. Closer to my tent, the handprints were fresh, glistening like the paint or blood had been pressed moments before I unzipped the door. I started running. I didn't care about the trail anymore. I cut through brush, scraped my legs raw on brambles, anything to get away. By sunset, exhausted, I found a clearing and collapsed. I told myself the stones couldn't follow me if I kept moving. Wrong. On the third morning, they were there again. I woke to find the cairns rebuilt around me. Impossibly neat, impossibly silent. The circle was smaller now, just 20 feet across. Panic clawed at me. I screamed into the trees, begging whoever was out there to show themselves. My voice echoed, but nothing answered. That night, I made a mistake. I thought if I stayed awake, I'd catch it. Whatever was building them, I sat in the dark, flashlight off, listening. Hours passed, my eyes blurred. The silence weighed heavier and heavier, until I realized that was the trick. It only moved when the forest was silent. Suddenly, the silence deepened. No breeze, no creak of branches, not even my breath seemed to matter. I felt the earth shift beneath me. When I snapped on my light, the stones were closer, 10 feet away. My chest tightened. I tried to move, but my legs wouldn't obey. I don't know if it was fear or something else holding me still. The final night, the circle closed. The cairns were stacked, so near I could touch them from where I sat. I heard the stones grinding, shifting as something vast crouched just beyond the light. And then it stepped inside. Not a man, not an animal, something that used the forest itself to build its cage around me. The last thing I saw before the light went out was a massive hand, red-stained, pressing a stone onto the earth, completing the circle. I thought the silence of the mountains would be peaceful. That's why we came. Me and Dylan, far away from the city, dragging our canoe through dirt trails until we found the lake. It looked perfect. The water was still as glass, framed by black pines that leaned so far over they seemed to be peering into their own reflections. No cabins, no fishermen, just us. The first night, though, we heard it. At first I thought it was the wind, a low droning hum that rose up as the moon hit the water, but the trees weren't moving. The air was perfectly still. The sound wasn't coming from above, it was coming from beneath the lake. Dylan laughed it off, said it was rocks shifting deep underwater. But when I pressed my palm against the canoe's side, I swear I felt it vibrating, like a heartbeat. But it gets crazier. The second night, it grew louder, almost like a song, not words I could understand, but notes strung together, layered with too many voices at once. I remember whispering, "It sounds like people." Dylan shushed me, forcing a grin, but I saw his jaw clench. Then the ripples started. The water quivered, though the night was dead calm. Circles spread outward from the center of the lake, endless and deliberate, like something just beneath the surface was shifting. We didn't sleep much. On the third night, Dylan said we should paddle out, just to prove it was nothing. I told him no. Everything in me screamed stay away from the middle, but he hated leaving questions unanswered. The water was black as ink, moonlight barely catching on the surface. The hum was so loud it made my teeth ache. Dylan leaned over, his ear inches from the water. That's when it happened. A pale hand shot out, gripping his face. It was so fast I barely saw it before he was yanked overboard. The canoe rocked violently, nearly capsizing. I screamed his name, reaching out, but the lake swallowed him whole. The hum split into shrieks, hundreds of voices rising from beneath us. I saw them then. White faces staring up from the water, eyes open but unblinking. Men, women, children, all bound together by ropes of algae and hair, their mouths opening in perfect unison. They weren't just drowning, they were singing. That's when the terror truly set in. I dug my paddle in, frantic, trying to get back to shore. But the canoe barely moved. Something was pulling it back, tugging at the water. At me. Dylan's face broke the surface for an instant, his eyes wide with terror, before pale arms dragged him under again. I don't know how I made it back. My arms are shredded from rowing, my throat raw from screaming, but the hum hasn't stopped. I hear it even now. Sitting by the fire, staring at the water's edge, louder than before, closer. The lake doesn't just take you, it keeps you singing. We reached the forest just before dusk, tired but excited. Old-growth pines rose above us like cathedral pillars, their trunks impossibly wide, their crowns swallowing the sky. I remember thinking how quiet it was, too quiet. It was Jake who noticed the first one. "Look," he said, pressing his flashlight against the bark. The pine had a hole bored clean through the middle, a tunnel running straight up the trunk like it had been hollowed by some colossal drill. The edges weren't ragged though. They were smooth, perfect. At first, we laughed it off. Just weird forestry stuff. Maybe bugs, maybe decay. But when we started seeing more of them, tree after tree marked with the same vertical tunnel, the laughter faded. We set camp in a clearing. I barely slept. Around midnight, I heard scratching. Not from outside, but inside the trees. It sounded like claws dragging upward. Quick bursts followed by silence, like something was climbing in there. I nudged Lisa awake. She heard it too. But that's not all. In the morning, Dan's tent was empty. His gear lay shredded, his sleeping bag ripped into long strips. No footprints, no drag marks, nothing but fabric torn apart, like it had been pulled from every direction at once. We argued, panicked, considered running back, but we were deep in, days from the trailhead. Leaving meant crossing miles of forest filled with those hollowed pines. So we stayed another night. That was the mistake. This time, I didn't even try to sleep. I sat upright, knife in hand, straining my ears. The scratching came again, closer, quicker. Then silence. Then the snap of nylon. Lisa screamed, but it was cut short, swallowed by the night. By the time I ripped open her tent, she was gone. Only shreds of fabric remained. Now, it's just me. I haven't moved in hours. My fire is dying, shadows stretching long between the pines. I keep hearing it, scraping, skittering, the soft hollow thuds, as something shifts inside the trunks. I need to know what I'm dealing with. That's the only reason I'm writing this down. Steadying my hands, I crawl to the nearest pine, press my face against the hollow, and raise my light. The tunnel breathes. I swear I feel air pushing against my skin, like the tree itself is exhaling. And then I see it, something moving inside, pale and slick, sliding upward in a spiral motion. It turns toward me. Its face is impossibly long, stretched like someone pulled the skin, until it tore. Two black eyes blink, not in sync, one a fraction of a second late, like a broken reflection. Its mouth opens, and I realize the sound I thought was scratching was teeth grinding against wood. I stumble back, my flashlight shaking. The sound multiplies. Every tree around me begins to scratch, dozens of them at once, answering. The forest isn't full of trees, it's a hive, and I'm inside it. Thanks for listening. Now close your eyes and sleep.